Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's pretty familiar to most of us,
Mm,
milk. But is it really the health hero that we've always been told it is?
you know, that's a great question because you hear a lot about the potential risks of milk these days,
Yeah,
and not to mention the ethical side of how it's produced.
absolutely.
Hmm.
So today, we're going to really try to get to the bottom of all of that. We'll
Yeah.
be looking at the science, the history, all the pros and cons, so you can
Yeah.
make your own informed choices about milk.
So, to really understand milk, I think we need to go back to the beginning, to our mammalian roots. Milk is the first food for all mammals.
Oh, that's true.
It's nature's perfect way to provide all those crucial nutrients for growth and development.
Makes sense. And humans have been drinking milk from various animals for thousands of years.
Exactly. And then about 11,000 years ago, things changed.
Oh, yeah.
The domestication of animals. Humans now had this steady supply of milk, which was especially vital when food was scarce.
And that changed us, right, like evolutionarily.
It did. Certain populations developed the ability to digest lactose, the sugar in milk past infancy.
That's why some people can drink milk without a problem and others can't.
Precisely. That's lactose intolerance.
Right.
The ability to digest lactose stuck around in some populations, especially those with a long history of dairy farming. But others, like many in East Asia, saw a decrease in the lactase enzyme needed to break down lactose after infancy.
Wow. So that's why something like 65% of the world's population is lactose intolerant.
Yes.
That's a lot,
It is, which really makes you think about milk's role in our diet.
for sure.
Is it a health benefit or a potential problem? We hear about cancer, bone health, and all those concerns about pesticides, hormones, and antibiotics in milk.
Okay, so let's unpack those concerns. Let's start with cancer. What's the link between milk and cancer?
Well, some studies have suggested that drinking a lot of milk might be connected to certain cancers.
Oh.
But when you look at all the research together, those big meta-analyses, they haven't really found a clear cause and effect relationship.
So drinking a moderate amount of milk, like 100 to 250 milliliters per day, it probably isn't going to increase your risk of cancer.
That seems to be the case based on what we know right now.
Okay, good to know. Now, what about bone health?
It's always been said that milk builds strong bones.
Yeah, drink your milk for strong bones.
Right, because of the calcium.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, the research on this is pretty mixed.
Really? So is milk actually helping our bones?
Well, some studies show a connection, but others don't.
Interesting.
It's complex. There's a lot going on there.
And then there's all the worry about things like pesticides, hormones, and antibiotics in milk.
Yeah, and those are valid concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to remember that many countries have strict regulations to make sure the levels of these things in our milk are safe.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
So it sounds like moderate milk consumption probably isn't going to be a big health risk based on the evidence we have.
That seems to be the consensus. But we can't ignore the fact that, for many people, milk causes problems.
Oh, absolutely. Allergies and intolerances are a real issue.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget about the whole acne thing.
Right. There's evidence suggesting that skimmed milk, in particular, might make acne worse for some people.
Huh. That's interesting.
Uh,
So it's more complicated than just saying milk is good or milk is bad.
yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So I guess the big question is, do we really need milk to be healthy?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Hmm.
While milk definitely has good stuff in it, like calcium, vitamin D, and protein,
Right.
it's not like you absolutely need it to be healthy.
Especially if you're eating a variety of other foods, right?
Exactly. You can get those nutrients from other places.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is where I think we have to start looking at the bigger picture.
Hmm.
What about the impact of milk production on the environment?
That's a good point, something people don't always think about.
Yeah, it's kind of the elephant in the room. Unfortunately, producing milk, especially on a large scale, has a pretty big environmental footprint.
Right, I've heard that the dairy industry is responsible for a lot of greenhouse gases.
It is, actually. It accounts for something like 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions,
Wow, that's a lot, more than all the airplanes.
more than the entire aviation industry.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not just the gases, right? There's also the land use.
Absolutely. Think about it. A huge chunk of the world's cropland, about 33%, is used to feed livestock,
Wow.
and that includes dairy cows.
Mm.
So we're talking about deforestation, habitat loss, all of that.
Yeah, that's not great. So milk production has a pretty big impact on the environment.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole ethical side of things, like how the animals are treated.
Yeah, you can't ignore that. The way animals are treated on those big industrial farms has become a major ethical concern.
Right, you see those images of crowded conditions, the separation of calves from their mothers, and it's pretty disturbing.
It is, and it's led a lot of people to really question whether they want to support the conventional dairy industry.
So what are the options? If we're concerned about the environment and animal welfare, what can we drink instead of cow's milk?
Well, luckily, there are quite a few alternatives out there, and plant-based milks are really leading the way.
Yeah. It seems like every time I go to the store, there's new plant-based milk on the shelf.
It's amazing. You've got almond milk, soy milk, oat milk, even
Mhm.
things like pea milk and cashew milk.
Wow. But are they actually as nutritious as cow's milk?
Some are closer than others. Soy milk, for instance, has a similar amount of protein to cow's milk.
Okay.
Other kinds might have less protein, but they often add vitamins and minerals like calcium, vitamin D, and B12.
So you have to pay attention to what you're buying,
Yeah.
read the labels and all that.
Definitely. It's important to know what's in your plant-based milk.
And what about the taste? Have they gotten any? Because I remember those old soy milks.
Yeah.
Not so great.
They've come a long way. You don't have to settle for that watery, bland stuff anymore.
Okay.
Now you can find creamy, frothy, plant-based milks that work great in coffee, smoothies, even for cooking.
That's great. Shows how much innovation is happening.
Absolutely. And there's even more exciting stuff on the horizon, like lab-grown milk.
Lab-grown milk. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It's also called cellular agriculture or cultured milk. Basically, scientists are figuring out how to make real milk without any cows involved.
Wait, how is that even possible?
It's pretty cool. They take cells from a cow's mammary gland and grow them in a lab.
Okay.
Then they feed these cells a special nutrient solution, and they start producing milk.
So it's actual cow's milk, just made in a lab.
Exactly. It's got the same taste, texture, and nutrients, but you don't need the farms, the greenhouse gases, or any of those ethical concerns.
This could be huge for the dairy industry.
It could, but it's still early days, you know?
Right. So what needs to happen before we see lab-grown milk in the supermarket?
Well, right now it's pretty expensive to make,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to figure out how to produce it on a much larger scale to meet demand.
So it might be a while before we're all pouring lab-grown milk on our cereal.
Probably, yeah. But the research is really promising.
It's fascinating to think about. It really makes you wonder what the future holds for milk.
It does. And it brings us back to a really fundamental question. What place do we want milk to have in our lives, and what about its impact on the planet?
That's a big question. We've talked about the history, the science, the ethics, even the future of milk. And it seems like milk is way more than just a simple drink.
Yeah, it really is. It's connected to so many things, nutrition, culture, and it has this huge impact that goes way beyond just what's in your glass.
For sure. With plant-based milks becoming so popular and now this whole lab-grown milk thing, the future of milk is kind of up in the air.
It is. And as we've seen throughout this deep dive, milk is at the center of so many important questions.
Mm.
Our own personal health choices, the environment, and ethical issues too.
Yeah. So where do you think all of this is heading? What's the future of milk?
That's a tough one. It's hard to say for sure, but one thing's for certain. People are starting to really think about the consequences of their choices.
I think that's true. You see more and more people wanting to buy products that match their values.
Absolutely. Whether it's choosing plant-based milks or supporting sustainable farms or maybe even embracing this lab-grown milk thing, people are the ones driving change in the industry.
It's pretty amazing to see it happening.
It is. And it's not just individuals. Either governments and organizations are also getting involved.
Right. They can make a big difference with policies that encourage sustainable farming and new food technologies, and just by raising awareness about where our food comes from.
Exactly. It's going to take all of us working together to change things for the better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main message you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to be informed. When we understand all the complexities around milk, how it's made, what it does, we can make choices that are good for us and good for the planet.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of milk. I hope this is giving you all some food for thought.
I hope so.
And maybe you'll even look at that carton of milk a little differently now.
Every sip is a choice, right?
Absolutely. So let's make informed choices that create a better future for everyone.
Well said.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive. Keep exploring this topic and stay curious about how our food choices affect the world around us.
Thanks for listening.